Patrick McDonnell, Kamut artist and cartoonist, and boy, just happy to be here in Helsinki. I've been asked to come to the convention for the last 10 years, and I always say next year, and this year I finally said it, and I'm glad I'm here. It's a wonderful city and a wonderful convention, and couldn't be happier. Thanks.
How did you become a cartoonist? Did you know from early on that that's specifically what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I wanted to be a cartoonist since I was probably 3 years old. And if you talk to a lot of cartoonists, I think it is something you're born to do. Most cartoonists always wanted to be cartoonists. So for me, it was Peanuts. I grew up reading Peanuts and fell in love with Peanuts. And it's funny, when I think about it, I think Peanuts also gave me my love for animals because I was totally absorbed with Snoopy and always wanted to get a dog. So I think I wanted to be a cartoonist for that long. I went to art school in New York City, and I started doing magazine illustrations, but the whole time I was doing magazine illustrations, I always felt like I really wanted to do a comic strip. And in my magazine illustrations, I used to draw a little white dog, and he would be in the background somewhere. And finally I said, I'm going to try to make a cartoon out of this little white dog. And a friend of mine told me I was drawing a Jack Russell Terrier. So I got a Jack Russell Terrier, and his name was Earl, and he influenced me to finally do a comic strip about him. So it's kind of full circle. The cartoon became a real dog, and then the real dog became a cartoon, and that's how Mutt started.
When you were studying, what was your aim? Did you think you were going to be a cartoonist or an illustrator?
You know, it's funny. I only took one cartooning class, and that was with Will Eisner. He's a cartoonist that did a comic called The Spirit. And, you know, I kind of felt like I had my own cartooning ideas, so I really wanted to learn other things. So I did a lot of I did big abstract paintings when I was in school. How that relates to Mutts, I have no idea. But I thought in school I should learn different things, so I didn't take too many cartooning classes, and maybe it shows. But I took all different things.
Would you say you learned something in art school that was actually useful for you?
Yeah, art school was fun. Art school is always fun.
References to different all kinds of art, from commercial art to actually classical painting. So is that something that relates to your
actually, the opening panels definitely is where my art school training came in. Usually with the opening panels, I'll write the joke first. I'll write the actual Sunday strip first, and then I try to think of what famous piece of art or famous piece of illustration might relate to the joke. And I just go through my years of, you know, looking at art, and we'll pick something out and then do a little drawing, a little tribute to that piece of art. And it's a lot of things. It's a lot of artists that inspired me, and a lot of book covers and album covers that inspired me. And I was just telling Jyrki, before coming here, I really started studying Muhonen, your comic strip, which, you know, I vaguely knew, but now that I'm really reading it, I just fell in love with it. So I'm definitely going to be doing a little Muhonen tribute someday soon. So I don't know when it'll appear here, but someday you'll see it. Yeah, and actually, I think in reading her stuff, it inspired me to be have a little more fantasy in my strips. So it might influence the whole strip, who knows. After getting my dog Earl, you know, a comic strip character needs to have a lot of joy in life, and who has more joy in life than a dog? And also, they also need to be innocent, because every day they kind of have to see the world new, because they kind of do the same things, or you know, it's a daily strip, so they really need to see the world new. And I think an innocent character really helps. So I thought a dog is a perfect comic strip character. And I just love the dog, and I felt like any joy that the dog gave me, if I could put into the strip, would make for a great strip. And when I first started, I really thought it was only going to be about Ozzie and Earl. And all the strips with the man and the dog are pretty autobiographical of me and my dog. And then in my sketchbook, I started drawing a little black cat, and I thought it'd be funny if there was a cat next door. And I really thought that was going to be good for a couple of weeks worth of strips. But then, just the way cats usually are, they kind of come into your life and take over. So Mooch kind of came into the comic strip, said, okay, I could hang out here. And that's how all the cats came into my life, was either a cat that just came in my backyard and all of a sudden became the cat we have now lived in my backyard for 2 years, and it took me 2 years to convince him I was okay. And now he lives in my house.
So Mooch kind of took over my dog strip. I think now it's more of a cat strip than a dog strip, but in my head, Earl is always the star, and Mooch is kind of the second banana that took over.
There's something about your drawing style that seems sort of old-fashioned, and I think relates to also older comic strips. So is that something you consciously wanted to do, or is it just the way you happen to draw?
Well, I think with most artists, you look at things you like and that they somehow get in your head and then they come out. And with me, I really found an affinity for the early comic strips like Crazy Cat and Popeye. You know, comics got slicker and slicker, and I love that look, but it's not the look that comes out of me. I kind of like things that look a little funky and a little more organic, so the line is more natural. So those were the comics that appealed to me. Like when you look at Crazy Cat, there's just like a nice handwriting quality to it. There's an immediacy to it that the slicker comics, and again, I love a lot of slick comics, but that just appealed to me more, so that was my drawing style. I love spontaneity, so I do very loose sketches. I don't like to do tight sketches. I feel like I love looking at artists' sketchbooks. I feel like that's, you know, it just has such a life and an immediacy to it that I kind of try to keep my drawings with that kind of energy. I mean, the thing that's magic about comics, I mean, not only my own, what I love about comics is that the simplest little drawings can give out so much emotion and so much information. I mean, when I look at Charlie Brown's just two little dots in a round circle and a squiggle for a mouth, but you could see what the character's thinking behind those little squiggles, and the magic of comics. And it's even fun for me when I draw a Mooch face or an Earl face, and you could just feel the life in them. And I don't know how you learn that or how you do that, but to me, my favorite comic artists all had that, where the characters, even though they're just a few little lines, have a vibrancy and a life to them that, to me, that's the magic of cartoons. I did explain in the Sunday page once to the squirrels, it's a Zen thing. There's I think it's called Sekatari, but there's a thing in Zen where if you hit someone on the head, they might get enlightened. So even though it looks cruel, the squirrels are trying to enlighten the much universe.
So is it kind of like the Crazy Cat thing of a symbol of love?
And Stinky is sort of my animal rights character. He really, because he's a striped cat, he believes he's a tiger, and he's really worried about tigers because tigers don't have it very good on our planet. I think there's only 5,000 tigers left, if that, in the wild. So it's his mission to try to save tigers. And I did a children's book with him called Hug Time, where he goes around the world to give endangered animals hugs because he just wants them to know somebody cares. And I did a strip once with Stinky where he was talking about he gets compassion fatigue. And compassion fatigue is for people who work in shelters, and after a while it's tough to work in a shelter and you get compassion fatigue. So another character asked him, how do you survive that? And he said that his photograph of Jane Goodall helps. And the Jane Goodall people saw that strip and asked me if they could use it on their website. And I said, of course, use it any way you want. And I said, I'd like to mail you the strip so you could give it to Jane Goodall. And they said, well, she's going to be in New York. Why don't you just give it to her? And I said, okay. So I got to meet Jane Goodall and give her the strip. And I eventually did a children's book about Jane Goodall's life that I'm not sure if it's here in Finland, but it should be. So Stinky was my ambassador to meet Dr. Jane Goodall. And Krabby probably being my favorite character. I think that's universal. Do they do that here? Yeah. So that's universal language right there. But what's funny is, even to this day, when I draw Krabby in the newspaper with that, I'll get a letter from someone saying, how dare you print that in the newspaper? And the more mad they get, I figure the better imagination they have.
They must know a lot of dirty words in their mind. You know?
But boy, that goes back, I mean, they were using that language in comics in 1919, you know, so that's just an old comic way to go. But Krabby probably uses it too much, but what else would a crab say? And this is Guard Dog. You know, Guard Dog's always chained in the strip. And I get a lot of letters from people saying, please, you know, let Guard Dog go free. And But I feel like he has a job to do. If I feel like if anyone gets inspired to take their dog off a chain, that guard dog is, that's his purpose. But whenever I draw him in my sketchbook, whenever I draw him in talks, he's happy as a bird. In doing Mutts, it was real important to me. I mean, there's been a long history of animals in comics. But when I started Mutts, I wanted my animals to be as animal-like as possible. Most animals in comics are just kind of human beings that are animals. But I really wanted my characters to try to stay as animal-like as possible. And I was trying to see the world through their eyes. And I think the more you look through animals' eyes at this world, you realize how tough a lot of animals have it on this planet. So it slowly became a bigger part of my strip to talk about some of the issues that animals deal with. And probably the easiest one in the beginning was shelters, that I felt like Earl and Mooch had a loving home and loving guardians, but I thought about all the animals in shelters that are waiting for people to take them home. So I started doing shelter stories at least twice a year for a week in the comic to remind the readers that if they're thinking about getting a dog or cat, the shelter's probably the best place you could go.
Does Mooch's family have any real-life counterparts?
That's interesting. They don't like to think so, but Frank and Millie are based on my mom and dad. They don't look anything like that, but we had cats growing up, and my mom loved the cats, but my dad wasn't too nuts about the cats, so that's kind of the Frank and Millie relationship with Mooch. So they don't look anything like my mom and dad, but it's kind of the attitude of my mom and dad. Yeah. And Mooch is based on a lot of cats I've had over the years. He's not any particular one, but he's sort of a combination of all of them.